All right, guys, welcome to the Digital Barbell Podcast. Thank you for being here. Thanks for all the ratings and reviews. I feel like it's not a podcast unless I say that in the intro. It's probably because I listen to a lot of podcasts and I hear other people say it. Otherwise,
you stopped saying the episode number and you added that in. Just kidding.
Oh, well, I like it. Hey, what's that shirt you're wearing?
Oh gosh.
What is it? Tell me the story behind that.
This is something, I think we were just cleaning out our closets recently and I found this. This is probably from the 90s.
It says, for those of you guys who are listening, it says Homeboy. It's a white shirt. And
I got this back in, this is what Donnie Wahlberg used to wear when I was a...
But that's like actual vintage,
the shirt.
right?
Yeah, this is the shirt. Is it probably? It's probably like Fruit of the Loom or something.
It looks scratchy.
It's not scratchy.
It's not scratchy, actually. I mean, you were really into New Kids on the Block.
Yeah, I was probably like 14 when I got this shirt.
To an unhealthy level. And I've seen the paraphernalia.
You didn't know me then.
I've seen the carryover into adulthood.
Yeah.
I mean, should we talk about like you have gone to New Kids concerts as an adult also?
No,
let's make it that kind of podcast.
Talk about that.
Okay.
I've gone to like 2 since I was an adult. I don't continue to go.
It's too many.
Just, it's like something you did, back then, and you're like, oh wait, they come back, so might as well check it out.
I got to give those guys a lot of respect, though. I mean, they are still cashing in, and now their audience actually has money, so they're going on these cruises that probably cost a couple $1,000 for your chance to rub elbows with a New Kids on the Block guy.
Oh gosh,
they're on HGTV now. They're all over the place. One guy's selling hamburgers, aren't they? Selling hamburgers too.
Yeah.
It's wild. All right, homeboy. Well, that's not what this episode is about. Today is a great episode. We had the pleasure of interviewing our former pastor in the year that we lived in Franklin, Tennessee, Jamie George. He recently wrote this book called The Thrivalist. I'm holding it up if you're not watching this, but it's called A Field Guide to Thriving in Life, Work, and Relationships. And as I was reading this book, I was like, oh yeah, we have to get him on the podcast to talk about this.
Yeah.
Because it relates so much to the way that we deal with other people in our lives, but also you'll notice if you read this book and as you listen to this episode, how we play these different roles in our own life and the ways that it's serving us and the ways that it's not. But like I said, excuse me, we met him during the year that we lived in Franklin, Tennessee. Yeah. Talk about why the heck we moved to Franklin, Tennessee and when that was.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I thought I was going to cry when I was like, okay, we're going to have him on this podcast. I was like, oh gosh, I'm probably going to cry. This is going to be embarrassing. But I managed to keep it together just because we lived in Franklin for 13 months. But I think it was just like a very special time in our lives. We moved there because I was trying to get closer to my grandfather. He lived in North Mississippi to try to care for him. And, living in Houston, Texas was 12 hours away and living in Franklin was just, a couple hour drive. So it was the closest city where we felt like we could get work. And we actually get into this podcast a little bit about, why we ended up having to leave. And because we couldn't.
Or maybe we didn't have to leave, but
why we did leave, yeah, because we couldn't find work.
Yeah, we ran out of money.
But I think in the short time that we lived there, we joined this church very early on. It just happened to be across the street from where we were living. We could walk there. The way the church was structured is if you got into like a home group, it was just like the people that joined the church with you. And I felt like we had like the best group. We've remained in contact with
now you're tearing up
with all the people in the group after we moved, and it was just a very special time there.
And that was where in 2009 we tried CrossFit.
Yeah, that is where we found CrossFit, And
shout out CrossFit Middle Tennessee. Actually, I don't think they're in business
anymore.
They're
not in business anymore, but yes. I think that we made the decision to move back to Houston, and I talked a little bit about in this podcast about how I think at the time, we weren't into doing hard things. It was just that was the easy decision. As I was reflecting back about it this morning about why, the decisions we made, back then it was okay, we can either scrap it here and try to maybe move, get a cheaper place to live and get these jobs at Starbucks and, do whatever we could. I was going to actually work at also Starbucks and the yogurt store.
Shout out Sweet Cece's, future podcast
I had an
sponsor.
opportunity to work at that store, and you had an opportunity to work as a carpet salesman at 3. It was such a weird 3 in the morning to 9 in the morning.
Who's buying carpet at 3 in the morning?
I don't remember why.
Yeah.
The hours were so weird, and so it was just all these decisions. And we were no, likely got a job back at Rice, and we can go back home and be comfortable. And I think if we if we hadn't have done that, we wouldn't be where we are today. But I think if we were making the decision today, I think we would have chosen the harder decision.
Maybe, yeah. And we wouldn't be here today if we hadn't moved to Tennessee in the first place, because there's no way we would have just stumbled upon CrossFit.
Yeah, that's true. We weren't doing CrossFit, and we found it. We were like doing boot camps in Houston, and then
you might have opened a boot camp instead of a CrossFit gym.
And
Blakely's boot camp. It has a ring to it also.
We got there and we're like, oh, we need to do something. Okay, there's this CrossFit gym. We've heard a little bit about this. Let's try it. So
you're going to love this interview. It's a great interview. And I'll put a link for where you can buy this book in the show notes of the episode. Definitely recommend it. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy this interview with author Jamie George. Okay, if you're tired of just surviving and instead you want to learn how to thrive, you're in luck. Today's guest is Jamie George, the author of The Thrivalist Handbook, a field guide to thriving in life, work, and relationships. Welcome to the podcast, Jamie.
Thank you. Great to be with you both.
It is great to be with you after all these years. Well, speaking of after all these years, we met you at kind of an interesting time in our lives and a challenging time in our lives. It was 2009. We had just closed our real estate business in Houston because of the banking crisis. We sold our house, packed up everything we owned, and we moved to Franklin, Tennessee to be closer to Blakely's grandpa, who lived in North Mississippi at the time. And we just so happened to rent a townhouse that was right across the street from a church called Journey that you were the pastor at. And it was the exact community that we needed at that time. So thank you for that.
Yes.
It was a lot of fun. Grateful for that season in my life too.
A lot of great memories of that time, and met a lot of amazing people that we've been able to stay in pretty close touch with over the years. But we haven't kept up with you much in the last 13 years. So tell us kind of what the heck's been going on with you since we last saw you.
Yeah. Well, I'm old. I mean, so I've got 4 kids. My twin sons, both married, one during COVID and one afterwards. And my daughter's now 23, 24. She's an event planner. She's a wedding planner. And then I have a 16-year-old still in the house, been married 30 years. I've probably written a few books since I saw you last.
Yep.
I left ministry and went into full-time coaching, started that about 4 years ago. And I'm really in my happy place. I'm kind of a mystic at heart, which you probably picked up on back in those days. And so while I'm really grateful for the Christian narrative, there are so many aspects of life, quantum physics, psychology, there are lots of other flavors and ways of seeing the world that I really enjoy. And so being kind of in a broader space where I can not only explore that, but talk about that has been really, really fun for me. So the coaching thing, it's also put me kind of, instead of running an organization, I'm back to being with people. And I like being with people. So I'm in my happy place.
That's awesome, man.
That is.
It was obvious as our pastor, just like the care you had for people individually. And we felt that through the sermons and had a connection immediately with that. And it kind of reminded us of this story where we were kind of nearing the end of our first year in Franklin, and basically we had blown through all the money that we made from selling our house, and like we never got a real estate business going there, and it was down to the time we were like, we have to decide what we're going to do. Are we going to try to make something work here? I mean, we already were applying for jobs there and stuff like that, and we didn't know what to do. And we're like, how do you make hard decisions like this in your life? And we waited around after church one day and walked up to you, probably crying if I'm remembering right. And we were like, waited for everybody to kind of leave you alone. And we were like, Jamie, here's the situation. What should we do? and like I'm sure you don't remember this, but the advice that you gave us in that moment is something that I've been able to use with clients, in fitness coaching. And basically what you told us was like, you pray about it, you think about what your options are, and you just have to go with what you think is right. And you won't know until looking back, how it played out, why it played out. But as long as you step forward in faith, knowing that you're trying to make the best decision, it's going to be okay. And that's some of the best advice. It obviously stuck with me this much, after all this time. So I come back to that a lot.
Oh man, that's beautiful. Well, I mean, if there's one thing we can all be reminded of, the only thing that's certain is uncertainty.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's funny at one level, if we will learn to dance that dance, I think the ego tells us, hey, you know what? A week from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, you're finally going to have enough money. You're going to finally have that thing resolved. That problem you have with your wife, it's going to be worked out. The thing with the kid, it's going to, like, with the friend and the economy and the president and the good news is it's just all the tension's going to be removed. And like the ego just says someday I'm going to get to that certain place and everything's going to feel great.
Mm-hmm.
And every single day is filled with another round of uncertainty.
Right. Right.
And I saw, like, to me, it's like, hey, what if there was only one game? And the game is, how do I engage uncertainty? Because if I reframe uncertainty into adventure, now I don't live a life out of lack, scarcity, and fear. Instead, I go, oh, this is today, just today is a masterpiece. Like, this is going to be amazing. I have no idea how I'm going to survive, or I have no idea what's going to happen with my kids, or I don't know what's going to happen with my marriage, or I don't, right? But I get to take an action, and what you said, I get to pay attention to what's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the magic of, like, that's all of life is. Like, it is faith, whether we want to accept it or not. Like, I'm going to take a step in the unknown. I'm going to listen to what's true. And if it's wrong, I'm going to take that as feedback and make another choice.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think about, like, when we worry about things into the future, we're living through that future situation, whether it's going to happen or not.
That's
we suffer, suffer twice.
Yes.
Yeah. I think people who listen to our podcast a lot now, I talk a lot about, like, you know, my background is through CrossFit, which I actually found right there in Tennessee that year we were there. But, you know, doing this little dose of daily suffering in your workouts really helps you, like, make these hard decisions and realize that you can do hard things in life. But back then we had just found it. And I don't think we were living our life where we were feeling confident making the hard decisions. Like, you know, looking back on that decision, we, you know, we wouldn't be where we are now if we had stayed, but it was like, we chose the easy path. It's like, oh, I can go back home and go get the job I used to have, versus, like, I don't, you know, Melissa Fuller was in our small group, and she was like, it was like the last, option of us. Like, she had a contact at the new Nissan plant for us both to work at Starbucks. I was going to work at the Starbucks, and he was going to be a runner between the real Starbucks and the Nissan plant. And we were like, can we live here and do this? Like, and, you know, we chose, like, that's the hard path. That, you know, let's go back and do the easy path.
The funny thing with the easy path was that we ended up moving back in with Blakely's parents until I found a job, and ended up taking a job for darn near minimum wage.
We would have made at the Nissan plant. But anyway.
Well, there's a great line by Peter Crone. He says, life presents to us people and circumstances to reveal where we're not free.
Mm-hmm.
And life just keeps showing us, like, are you free here? Nope. Okay, then life's coming as your teacher.
Yeah.
Right. Until I guess I still get to learn that.
Yeah. We still get it every day too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we get into the actual book, the Thrivalist Handbook, what made you want to write this book?
Well, you know, there are some writers out there. This is my 5th, 6th book. There are some writers out there who, like, they love to write and it pours out of them. I haven't met many, but I've met a couple. And that is not the dance of writing with me. It is usually it has been the most painful thing I've ever done. I've started businesses, you know, we started a church. I mean, the whole thing. Writing, painful. And I think, I'm sure some of it's my ego, perfectionism, and all the stuff. But I think it's, you know, you're trying to, the first few books I wrote were they call them trade books. They're 40,000 words. You're taking people on a journey. So you're really thinking about the beat change and what's engaging and how am I serving someone, but also entertaining them so they want to keep turning the page. The Thrivalist Handbook's a little different. I wrote it as a handbook. There's almost no illustrations in the book. You probably noticed I put QR codes. Like, if you want an illustration, hit the QR code and watch a video. Because I on purpose, I wrote this one different. I wrote this to be read in one setting. Mm-hmm. You could sit for 2 hours and read this thing. But it's also meant to be kind of a reference. You could stick it in your purse or throw it in your backpack. It's meant to be a handbook to remind you that there are 3 general unhealthy ways of relating, and there are 3 really healthy ways of relating.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get sucked in. And And because I've been talking about it so much with my clients were just like, oh, can you tell me about that victim thing again? And I'm like, I should write that down, like, and that really was the compulsion. It was really just to serve the people that I was meeting with daily and going, I need something that will serve them, that's handy and helpful.
We do the same thing with our clients. We get, frequently asked questions. So we're like, okay, we need to create a piece of content that can be the reference for this situation for people.
Totally.
So, same kind of idea. Well, as we were reading the book, we of course made connections to our own relationships, but also kind of the dynamics that go on within ourselves and how those different roles that we can play can kind of prevent us from reaching our fitness goals. So I was getting a lot out of reading this from two different perspectives. You start the book by talking about expectations being the stories that we believe about how other people are going to behave. And we spend a lot of emotional time and collateral trying to like fix other people's behavior, which is just this like frustrating dead end. And we do it to ourselves too. So I want to talk about how important expectations are in, going from just surviving to thriving.
Yeah, that's man, you hit it. So one of the things, an agreement I make with my clients early on, as I say to them, look, all expectations are premeditated resentments.
Mm-hmm. I wrote that down as a quote because that stuck out in the book a lot.
Right? I mean, it the moment you have an expectation, somebody's about to be screwed.
Even ourselves sometimes.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. They're going to pay because I'm pissed at them, or I'm going to pay because I'm suffering because, and expectations are always filled with ambiguity. It's what that first line is. It's what I make up about how someone else should behave. Well, they may be a different temperament than me, a different personality type, a different Enneagram type, a different birth order. They grew up in a different culture, right? So when we use the phrase common sense, what's common sense to us may not be to another individual. Sometimes it's in the same home. You get married, they're two different family systems. And so there's just a lot we make up and we create this energy. And I believe it's not just metaphorical. I believe there's an actual energy that we're creating of how what I think about how you should behave. And then we all pay because I'm resentful, ultimately you can be resentful. And so what I say to the clients is, can we just eliminate all expectations? Would you never have another expectation again? Which is a bit of a tall order. But if we can practice this, now nothing exists in a vacuum, and as you know, in what you do, so we have to replace it with something. So my invitation is, let's replace that with an agreement. So instead of an expectation, let's make an agreement. And now here's what's really fun about agreements. First of all, I'm responsible, so it puts the ownership back on me. Have I been clear about what I want? So if I want my child to be home at a certain time, literally this happened last week. I'm with my daughter, and she's I'm online. We're going to buy her some stuff for dance, and she's on her phone, and I needed her to respond to a thing, and she's on her phone. And I make a passive aggressive statement to her, something about, well, if you weren't just staring at your phone, or some passive aggressive, right? My 16-year-old, who is grown up in my home, looks at me and says, well, that was passive aggressive. And then says, was there a request? And I'm like, you know what? That's fair. I said, she's like, all you have to do is ask, Dad. And I'm like, fair. I'm like, would you please put your phone down? Would you be present with me until we finish this process? She goes, sure. Right. But I just was frustrated that I had an expectation that she was watching me while I was selecting her dance material. Right. And instead I could have said, hey, can we make an agreement? Well, what's that? Hey, while we do this, would you put your phone down and stay present with me? Because I got some questions about this. Yeah, sure. Oh, we have an agreement around that? Great. And when we make agreements with people, we don't manage them. We just manage the agreement. And now it takes all that personal stuff out of it. Like, well, you didn't. And it's just, no, we just, and you can feel the difference in the energy. Like, hey, did you do the thing that we agreed on? No. Oh, okay. Well, we've got a broken agreement. What are we going to do? Well, I guess we probably should make a new agreement. Oh, okay. So we need to rebuild some trust. Oh, okay. Well, what will you do? Okay. Does that work for you? Yeah. No, I'm negotiating. Like, oh, okay. Right. And off we go. Yeah. And it's pretty clean.
Yeah.
But man, it takes some work.
Yeah. I have a lot of things running through my mind. You went through that example. But I want to really pay a lot of respect to the stuff that you talked about in the book. The first concept that you really get into is the concept of the red triangle. And it's a model for the different roles that we take on in relationships to make ourselves feel safe. But this is not the triangle that we want to be spending our time in. It leads to dysfunctional relationships. So can you kind of tell us about the roles of the red triangle and kind of walk us through those?
Yeah. It's developed by Stephen Cartman in the 1960s. For those who've been on the planet a little longer, they might remember transactional analysis. It kind of comes out of that stream. And I don't know why it didn't hang around in mainstream, because it actually feels like such a simple tool. It's really, really helpful. And you might find 3 or 4 TED Talks on it. But interestingly enough, it's actually hard to find the inverted version, the healthy triangle. You can find the red triangle sometimes, but it's harder to find the green one. Well, we'll start with the red. So at the very bottom of the red triangle is the word victim. And this is the most disempowered stance. It's your greatest, it's the most disempowering way of being. And some people might say, immediate reaction I get sometimes is, yeah, but what if I was victimized? I was a victim of a crime or abuse. And one of the things that therapists say, especially to like abuse victims, is they will say, hey, the moment something was done, you were violated, somebody stole something from your house, or you were abused or hit or something. The moment it happened, you were the victim. And the next moment, you're not. And what they're trying to help you understand is, if I continue to live with that as my identity, then suddenly I'm giving all my power over to the perpetrator. And so living as a victim is a disempowered stance, because I'm at the mercy of all the external things and external people happening in the world. I have no power. I'm just the victim. And so I spend a lot of time there blaming, criticizing, pointing the finger, all the stuff. And it's the deepest form of suffering. If you're around someone who lives as a victim, it tends to be rather annoying to hear someone in that space. But if you can have a level of compassion, that's they are in continual suffering, and they're caught in a loop. And that's what happens in the red triangle. We get caught in a dance. Now we bounce out every now and then. So another part of the red triangle is the perpetrator, and that's when we're afraid to be. We feel exposed, and we feel vulnerable, and so we go on the offensive. We take a shot at somebody. That was me. My passive aggressive comment to my daughter was a perpetrating comment, because I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel important. I felt like I made up that her phone was more important than me. So in that moment, I was a victim. And then I went right up to perpetrator, took a shot at her about the phone. And the beauty is, I had a moment where my daughter she's got lots of other moments. She's been in the red, but there was a moment where she acted out in the green triangle and invited me into a healthier way of relating. And fortunately, then I responded. We can get to the green in a minute. But the third place on the red triangle, if we would have stayed in the loop, is when we become a rescuer. And this is so victim, perpetrator, and rescuer. Rescuer is the hardest one to notice, because it's way more subtle. Because it can look like you're serving, or you're sacrificing, or you're coming to the rescue for someone, but it has an energy to it. And the energy is usually very codependent, to use psychological language. Definition of codependency in a phrase is, if you're not okay, I'm not okay. So to remove the tension, I'm going to come along and I'm going to fix it. I'm going to rescue it. I'm going to I don't like what's going on here. I might even say I'm sorry for something I didn't do, just to try and smooth it over. Or somebody's like, I can't do this thing. And you go, well, let me do it for you. And unfortunately, rescuers don't realize it, but it's a disempowering action as well. I'm disempowering the other person, because I'm not leaving them in the struggle long enough to get through it. And, it would be like somebody's on their last rep, and instead of like being there and helping them through it, or going, don't worry about it, I'll do that rep for you, right? That's where all the gains happen, right? I mean, this is the magic place. Sometimes people are right at that place of breakthrough where they're in their greatest struggle, and we come over and we crack open the cocoon. And instead of the person learning to fly, they fall. And rescuers don't realize that often, but that's where we get sucked in.
I think it's pretty obvious, like from a fitness perspective, that if you're stuck in the victim mindset, you're never going to make any progress. And this could go like wider term, like you see yourself as a victim because of childhood trauma, and that, you cope with that in unhealthy ways that block your fitness, or even just on the day-to-day of, there was too much traffic, or what was I supposed to do? There was a bunch of cookies sitting around. Like,
right.
It puts you in this like powerless situation. Like you talked about, it's the worst place to be, but it really has to become a mindset shift of you're still in control of your own choice because you're not actually a victim in that moment.
Yeah.
And then I think like an even a more subtle way that the role of the perpetrator, or not the perpetrator, but the rescuer prevents people from reaching their fitness goals is you only have so much time and energy during the day, resources, whatever. And if we are stepping in as the rescuer and being the, yes, I will do that for you kind of person for every single situation in our life, what do you have left to give to yourself?
I loved that concept where you talked about the people having to like hug for 30 seconds and they realized they were like leaning on each other. And it's kind of like that thing, if the mask falls in the airplane, you have to put it on yourself first before you can help others. I think about that a lot of like, especially in mothers, they want to take care of the family and not take care of themselves. And I think it is so important to make sure that you are taking care of yourself in these situations so that you can then care for your family.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely. And you nailed it. That's the dance. We just get hooked. And that's the ego part of us, right? It's there's one thing to remember about the ego. It's not bad. The ego is that primal part of us that's keeping us alive, right? The ego walks around on the planet trying not to die. That's the ego. But there's this higher self and there's a different way of being. And when we do that, we're in our heart, we're full of love. It's a totally different energy. We talk about it's like a higher vibration. I think sometimes we say that anecdotally or metaphorically, but it's physiological. You're literally vibrating in a different place when you're up in that higher self.
So do you have any tricks for, let's say somebody doesn't have somebody in their life who can talk to them about this stuff in a healthy way, and they don't have somebody who comes to them in a kind way and says, hey, you're kind of being a victim in this situation. And they're just relying on noticing these things in themselves, where they're at on the triangle. What are some ways that we can become more aware of when we're falling into one of these roles? I think that would be really helpful for our listeners to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm in an old mansion, like Civil War mansion in the basement, and they've decided to do some upgrading upstairs. So if you hear banging in the background, I promise you no one's dying. But I'm like, wow, they're really getting after it. Franklin, Brentwood, Tennessee, it's lots of, Anyway, so, I think the thing to do is to check in and notice. The first thing to check in is like, so to me, pain is a gift, suffering is optional. It's a little bit of semantics, but it's a good hook for the brain, right? Like pain is good. We know that pain is our teacher. Pain is helpful. Certainly in your world, we need pain to actually move through, right? The pain's telling us something. Pay attention to the pain. Is this good pain? Is this injury pain? Right? All those things. Mm-hmm. But suffering to me is optional. I don't have to suffer. So pay attention and go, am I suffering right now? Another way to look at that is, am I just surviving? Or am I really thriving? Like, and again, another way to check in is go, do I love life right now?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, life is meant to be gulped and not sipped. Like, am I really enjoying life? And if not, where am I? And that's a great question to ask. Where am I right now? And if you'll do a little self-reflection, check in. Am I hooked as the rescuer? Am I hooked as the victim? Am I hooked as the perpetrator? If you'll just, at one level, it's that simple. Wake up in the morning and go, what's my state? Because if I'm not loving life, then I'm not actually engaging in my empowered ability to choose.
Yeah.
So that's a fundamental question to ask. Like, am I surviving? Am I suffering? Am I not enjoying life? Okay, why? Where am I? Mm-hmm. And there's a chance to check in. And of course, the green triangle becomes an opportunity to lift ourselves up out of that. And that's when we move up into love and the power of choice.
That's a good transition into the green triangle. All right. So I think the first step in the green triangle, if I'm not wrong, is ownership, right?
That's right.
Let's talk about that, because when it comes to fitness and stuff, it's a lot of times we tend to blame external circumstances. Mm-hmm. I don't have the same genetics as that person. They have more time on their hands, all these things. And it's really just shirking the ownership of the control that we do have. So how do we get better about taking ownership?
Yeah. Well, if victim is the very bottom in the abyss, where we suffer, where we experience hell, ownership is the very top. It's the zenith. It is our greatest position of power. and to understand that, we are, whatever your perspective is on spirituality and science and all that, we're at some level, there's a higher self or an expression of the divine, right? And so that means I'm an empowered chooser. I have agency. And, you can go to Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, is a fundamental, it to me is the quintessential example of him telling the stories about people surviving in the Holocaust and choosing their attitude. And like one guy having a morsel of bread and giving it to another one, in this picture of generosity and this love that this person was expressing in the midst of an environment that was hell.
Yeah.
He still chose his attitude. He chose his generosity. He chose this expression of love. And I love that, right? At the end of the day, we all get to choose our attitude. We all get to choose our perspective. We all have the power of choice. There are an infinite number of possibilities that surround us any minute of any day. We usually think, oh my gosh, especially when we're stuck, I don't know if I can do that or that. Like, it's binary. This is that, and that's right or that's wrong. Well, what if there's an infinite amount of possibilities and neither are right or wrong?
Yeah.
Get out of the right and wrong frame and pay attention to the true and false frame. False would be red triangle, true would be green. I'm an empowered chooser. Go down into my knower. What do I know is true right now? You guys made a decision. And you know what? At the end of the day, leadership is defined by two things. Set the direction and you make the tough call. And I'm the leader of my own life.
Mm-hmm.
And when I move up into the top of that green triangle, I'm in ownership. I own it. And have you ever been around somebody and they screwed up and they go, you know what? My bad. Like that's just on me. And have you ever noticed, even if you're amped about something, you're like, oh my gosh, you broke that lamp, or you didn't show up on time, or you didn't turn that thing. And somebody's like, you know what? I just got to tell you, I own that. It was totally on me. And you're like, boo, you just kind of power down. But like, okay. And sometimes we're even like, well, I could have handled it a little differently too. It's even magnetic. Sometimes it invites another person to take ownership. So that's the top.
There was a quote I highlighted in the book, and I posted it to our Instagram story yesterday. You said, I don't know if you made this up or you stole it, but it's amazing.
Most everything is stolen, so I'm sure I got it from somebody. Adults
announce, children explain.
Yes. Oh, gosh. Yeah, I did hear that from somebody.
That is amazing.
Yeah, you can just tell when you're in that child self.
Yeah.
Right?
Guilty so a lot of times.
Yeah. Yes. So ownership is the power position. The other two places on the green triangle are boundaries and negotiation. And boundaries is just where no is a complete sentence. And this is, if we were in an AA group right now, I'd be like, hi, my name's Jamie. Like it took me a long time to understand. Yeah. Oh, wait, I can say no. Mm-hmm. Like that's an option. I was not very good at boundaries early on in my life, and I got hooked rescuing, thinking I was meant to rescue everyone, and often I wasn't serving people. I certainly wasn't serving myself. And so to realize there are times you might go, you know what, that doesn't work for me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, and it's that. But man, if you're really a people pleaser, you're really concerned about approval, or you're really managing perception, that's hard.
Yeah.
So what will somebody think if I say no?
Yeah.
But like you said earlier, the result of that, even though it's hard, is freeing that person up to take responsibility for their own life, and also freeing up your time and energy to take care of your own self.
Mm-hmm. Well said. That is it. And man, in your world, this is 100% true, right?
Yeah.
Like how many times, and this is, for working out for me, how many times have I given up? Workout is often the thing I sacrifice because a client needs a thing. I'm like, well, I guess I'll delete my workout today, right? I'm actually not being kind to myself. And I got to really check in. Is this really true, or is this a mini self-betrayal?
Mm-hmm.
And that's doing the deep work
to
really slow down long enough to pay attention and go, is this a business decision? Yes. Is this the right call? Yeah, I'm going to give this up now, or no, it's not, right? And then that's an easy segue over to negotiation, because in negotiation, you're just acknowledging that the other person gets to set boundaries too.
Mm-hmm.
You both have agency. Mm-hmm. So in negotiation, I'm often saying, hey, would this work for you? Here's what works for me. Would this work for you? No. Okay. Well, how about this? Well, I think I could adjust to this. How can you adjust to that? Here's what works for me, right? You're just negotiating, take some ownership, and you're acknowledging their own agency. And when you stay in that loop, ownership, boundaries, negotiation, you're centered in choice. And ultimately, usually almost always there's just this flow of love that happens because there's an equitable exchange. You're honoring the other person. Nobody likes to be told what to do. We like to be invited.
Yeah. This is a personal one for me. Like my first reaction when Blakely quote tells me something to do is to bow up and get defensive. Like I need to work on this a lot for sure.
Yeah, there's a temptation for all of us, right? And sometimes it's how we hear it, and sometimes it's semantics and all those things. But when someone says, "Hey, would you mind grabbing that for me?" Mm-hmm. Hey, pick that up and get that.
Yeah,
that's just. It sounds different.
Mm-hmm. What's the quote you had in the book about it's nice to be wanted, but not nice to be needed?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. If you've ever been around somebody who's like, if you've ever seen the movie What About Bob, he captures this perfectly. Bill Murray, like, I need, you're like, I need feels clingy. Like, I need you. Most of it, like, I need is it's not very alluring. It's I need is an anti-aphrodisiac.
That's right. That's why the bad boys get all the girls.
Right. But if it's like, I want you. Oh, you do? Like, well, I might want you too. Right? Like, want is like, whoa, own your want. That's kind of attractive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, own it.
Maybe like being around somebody that you notice they are in that I need, and like tone with you all the time is a good indication that's somebody you need to set some boundaries around.
100%. And you'll find them if they're I need, they're down in the red triangle somewhere. I can promise you every time. Right. And now it's semantics. Sometimes we just use the word I need and we mean it differently. But if you pay attention, there's often this is about the energy behind the word.
Yeah.
And if you'll notice, you'll feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to something in the red triangle, this just kind of popped into my head, but it's kind of interesting how we can change roles in there too. Like if you become a rescuer to somebody who's a victim, there becomes a point where like something happens in your own mind when you start to resent that person. And I think that happens in even within ourself. Like we start to feel like a victim for our circumstances and we kind of turn on ourselves and it turns into this downward spiral of pity that just kind of keeps us stuck. Have you seen that play out in people before?
100%. It's really perceptive. Yeah. Especially if you've ever been around somebody they're probably an Enneagram 2 or they're a server or gift of hospitality kind of person that they love to help you. They love to do things. And sometimes you're like, and they almost kind of overfunction sometimes where you're like, I didn't ask you to clean out my refrigerator. Like, but they're doing a thing or they're doing a thing and they're doing a thing and they're really nice. And they're like, oh, well, thanks for the groceries. I didn't really ask for that. Well, that was, I did. Today was boss's day. And thanks for the, like, but they're doing a thing and they're doing a thing. And then somewhere along the way, you're like, something happens and they completely disappear. And you're like, what? And you didn't know it. But somewhere they were generating an expectation that you would do something for them in return. Mm-hmm. And they might even say in the moment, like, no, I don't want anything from you. No, this is good. I loved. And I'm now at 53, I'm like, oh, there's a hook somewhere. Right. And now sometimes that's me as a skeptic and I'm down. I'm actually down in the red triangle. I got to be careful because I'm down there, I have to be careful that I don't get sucked into like, oh, you're trying. I'm in a victim place going, you're trying to take advantage of me, aren't you? Or you don't know better, right? I got to stay green. And I want to give people the benefit of the doubt, but I also got to move over to my boundary and go, I'm not sure I want that much free stuff from you. Thank you anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Because, and again, I don't think sometimes those people are well-meaning, but they do something, and in their mind, slowly but surely, there's this equitable thing happening in their mind. And when it doesn't come back the way they want it, they get and probably a lot of people have some family member who fits this category, and then they get resentful.
Yep.
And now I would say, by the way, if somebody's like, how do you deal with that? I'd go right at it. I would say, hey, it feels like there's a weird energy. Is there something going on? No. Well, we haven't talked for 3 months, or there's something. I just sensed something. Is there anything at all? Is it possible that did you have any expectations of me that I did not fulfill? Like, just go right at it. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I mean, I showed up. I was there when the kid was born, and I showed up and I brought you a meal, and you haven't said anything. And okay. So there was something you were looking for in return.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not exactly, but there was.
It's going to come out eventually.
Could you tell me what that was? And if I can serve you, right? And if I can serve you in that way, I will.
Yeah.
Well, I just really wanted a card or a thank you note, or you know what? That's fair. I'll send you one this week. Well, it doesn't have any. It doesn't matter now. Well, no, you know what? Clearly, it mattered at some point, and it did mean a lot to me. And I could have made that a gesture, expression of kindness, and I'm going to do that for you.
Yeah.
Right. And it kind of you're calling that person on the rescuing energy,
right?
And you're also staying green, like, and you're modeling for them in that moment how to negotiate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're inviting them to ownership by saying, what is it exactly that you wanted? And if they'll do it, if they'll finally get up there and claim it, they don't know it, but they got pulled up out of the victim up to ownership because they told you what they wanted. And then you negotiate and go, well, let me see if I can do that for you.
So if you do a really good job in that scenario and follow those steps with making an agreement, setting boundaries, and not coming just as a rescuer, and they don't respond in the way that we hope, where do you go from there? How do you let go of your responsibility in the situation?
Well, you're not responsible for them. So you're not letting go of anything. Keep in mind, you're only responsible for you. So the only thing probably when you pay attention to the energy you're letting go of is an expectation.
Right. That's exactly what you made. You're leading me to that.
Right.
Word.
We're right back. Like the circle takes you right back. Right.
Right.
Well, hold on a second. Now I did the right steps.
Yeah.
Right.
Why didn't I get what I wanted? I did the thing.
Yeah.
Totally.
Circle.
My expectation is, well, if I go green, certainly they're going to join me. Now, maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
You just buy them the book and give it to them. Slide it under their door.
Yeah, right. Yeah, just Amazon. Just send it to them. Who sent me this?
Anonymous.
Yeah.
Author's gift. Okay, let's change gears a little bit. There's a concept you talk about in the book that we talk about a lot with our clients. This is the have to versus the get to concept. You say in the book that have to is stamped with compulsion and dread. Get to is flavored with interest and pleasure. That's a great reframe of the motivation behind our choices. Tell us more about that. How do we get to that place where everything in our life is a get to instead of a have to?
Yeah, I'm literally sometimes on my 14th or 15th rep, and I'm saying this in my mind. I get
to do this.
I get to do
these burpees.
Right. I do. I mean, I did totally. And I am literally like, okay, both my arms work. Cool. I get to feel this pain. Like, right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it really is. It's funny, but I mean, it's that practical.
Just putting in the reps.
Right. It is. I'm showing up and gosh, it's always in the, I wish I was past this, but I've yet to have a workout go by, at least in the last few months, there's an exit point I'm feeling way before it needs to arrive, right? Like I want to be done now.
You're looking for the ripcord on the way in.
I am looking absolutely like I got to leave now, right? How come Jackie hasn't texted me? Isn't there something I'm supposed to be doing? Yeah, totally.
The old fake phone call.
Yes. Oh gosh, all that. And in that moment, I'm lost in I have to do this, and I've forgotten. And I mean, it's split second. Like, oh my gosh, I get to do this. I get to. My body gets to expand. My body gets to push itself into its next level. I get to participate. And it's you for anybody who takes themselves through the exercise, I think you mentioned the exercise in the book, but you literally just write down 10 things you have to do and 10 things you get to do. And then pull out your list of 10 things you have to do. And what would it take to reframe those to be I get tos? Like, I have to pay my taxes, or you know what? They're paving the road out front and we got a pretty good military. I get to pay my taxes.
Yeah, that's a timely
I get
example.
to live in America, and I've traveled a lot of the world. I get to live in America. I'm grateful, right? It's a quick reframe. That my taxes are a quick reframe.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing. And then the other thing is I also have the power of choice. So if it's an I have to that I don't want, maybe I just need to get rid of it from my list.
I think that's a great one. You said in the book that it's an important thing to remember with choice is that you get to choose again. This is something that we talk about a lot with clients, because with nutrition especially, it's really easy to fall into the all or nothing mentality where we tell ourselves, all right, I'm going to eat clean today, whatever that means. And you walk by the donuts 4 times and you don't take one. And then the 5th time you go by, you grab one, you've ruined the day, you go all in, have 3 more splurge meals, and you act like your choices were out of your control the rest of the day because you made one wrong choice. But one thing we try to work with reframing people is that time is not this lump sum. The weekend is not one event. A party is not one event. Every little decision is a chance to course correct and make the next right decision. They're all independent choices. It's hard.
That's
though.
So good. So good. It is hard. And then and it's hard, and I have the power of choice. And
Right.
I get to, right? If I stay hard too long, I'll be a victim.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's so hard. And I'm whining. Here I go. I mean, I'm sliding all the way down.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know, so
reminded of this. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Blakely.
I'm reminded of this every time I hit like a little injury or something. It's just like I really reframe that in my mind of like, oh, I get to run around the cul-de-sac today if I'm able to, because when I can't, I'm like, oh, I want to, I want to be able to do it. So anytime I have a little injury, I'm like, okay, I'm reminded like I get to do this every day.
And we get stuck in the mindset of thinking that whatever we're like right now will be like forever. Like our choice is just gone.
Right.
That's right. That's the lie, right?
Yeah.
And when a choice is inhibited, like you said, oh, this is my reminder time. I can't run right now. I injured my knee.
Yeah.
Oh, this is my this is my teacher. It's because we learn through contrast.
Yeah.
Oh, this is what it's like not to run. I'm really grateful I got to run yesterday. I'm looking forward to running when this is healed.
Yeah.
I guess I'm going to try something new because there's an infinite number of possibilities.
Exactly.
So I might be working on core, right? Like,
Yep.
I love that, Blake. I think that's brilliant.
It's the gift of injury. Truly.
Yeah, it really is.
There's a gift in it.
Yeah.
Look at it that way. So many people run into problems with their fitness because of their perfectionist mindset. Like, if I can't do it perfectly, I'm not even going to try. I have this theory that this kind of perfectionism is really just like a disguised self-sabotage that might even be self-conscious.
Yeah, well said.
Theory?
I agree with you. I totally. Right. The ego's walking around on the planet trying not to die. And it is avoiding discomfort at all costs.
Yeah.
The ego wants to sit in the place of comfort, control, and approval. That's when I know I'm hooked. Those are usually the three characteristics of my ego self. I want comfort, I want control, and I want everybody to love me.
Yeah.
If any of those three things are disrupted, my ego's up. And I'm usually in the energy of fear or shame. And those are good markings to be like, am I in shame right now? Am I in fear? Oh, I'm not in my higher self.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that makes getting in shape so hard too, is like, there's this comfort in the ego of the situation that you're in, even if it's, you're unhappy with your health, but there's some comfort in the routine of it that just draws you back in over time, even if you make progress towards a different goal in your life. Got to stay in the green.
That's right. We're creatures of habit.
Yeah.
You show me your habits. I know I coach almost every day. You show me your habits. I know who you are.
Yeah. You're so right.
We're all just a collection of our habits.
Yeah. And a year from now, you will not change because of a diet that you were on. You'll change because of any habits that you changed.
Well said.
Yeah.
That's it. And we all need, this is what I love about what you guys do. And I hope people who are listening to your podcast hear this. This is why they desperately need you, or hopefully want you. But is that we all, in order to have a successful evolution, adaptation, shift, or change, the prerequisite is structure, accountability, and repetition. Those three things. I have to have. What's the structure? I need a plan, and I need accountability. Like, there has to be some kind of accountability, because nobody functions in isolation. And especially on the front end, because I'm going against all these neural pathways that are like, what are we doing that for? The couch was way more comfortable, right? So I'm doing these are new synapses that are firing. So accountability, and then repetition. You could even add to that celebration, because I think the celebration is hearing yourself or other people going, way to go, good job. And if you look this up, it's fascinating to watch how a thought is formed by two synapses firing. And the more those things fire, it literally meshes together, and it starts this, nerve cells that fire together, wire together. It now becomes literally a pathway. And you're going from old pathways, to new pathways, and it takes a little while to get that new thing firing. And that's why I'm grateful you guys are doing what you're doing.
And going through all that, going all the way back to the beginning of the episode, that takes time. So change your expectation for the results that you're going to get in the time frame that you're going to get them in, so you don't end up with an unmet expectation for all that stuff to happen.
Just get rid of all the expectations and make agreements with Jonathan and Blakely.
There we go.
What a great place to wrap up on a free commercial.
Right. I mean, make an agreement. Just go, hey, I'm making an agreement to 90 days. I'm making an agreement to 6 months. Like, pick the thing, and then and then show up. And if you only did one push-up that day and you went home, okay, but you showed up, right? Like, I'm sure you guys talk about that at length. Like, just show up. Showing up is 80% of the deal.
Yeah. We talk a lot about process-oriented goals versus outcome goals, and that's essentially what we're talking about here.
I love it. It's so good.
Cool, man. Well, I really appreciate your time, both of us. It's so good to reconnect with you. Definitely recommend everybody listen to this, go check out the book. We're going to order a few copies to send out to the victims in our lives. Kidding. Tell everybody where they can find you online, how they can hire you, and just how to connect with you.
Yeah, jamiegeorge.com. That's my website. So you can find most everything there. TikTok, I haven't put some stuff out recently, but I had some people kind of take that viral a little while back. So I've got a bunch of coaching that's been there for a while. Jamie George Coach. All my social media is Jamie George Coach.
Okay.
So you can find me in either of those two places, and there's a contact form on my website if anybody's interested. Yeah, we'd love to connect.
And you've got a podcast that's really good.
We do. Yeah, it's called the Thrivalist Podcast, and that's on all the places where podcasts are, wherever they are.
They're out there. Well, we'll link to all that stuff in the show notes for this episode, so you guys go check it out. Thanks again for your time, Jamie.
Great to see you guys. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah.
All right, take care. We'll see you.